Okay, I think we'll get started. It's about 7:02, and would like to thank everyone joining us today. And I'd like to set the stage for our conversation today. And I think it's important that we locate ourselves within a broader context. We're faced with a number of intersecting global crises that are playing out locally in quite alarming ways. First of all, we're in the middle of an economic crisis. There are nearly a half a million construction industry workers that have been out of work since April, with millions of dollars in canceled developments and little indication when it'll pick back up. There's an undeniable environmental crisis that's resulted in 5 of the 10 largest California fires in history burning as of 2 days ago. And more than 2 centuries of racial planning policies and exclusionary zoning have coalesced into the nation's worst housing and public health crisis, which is disproportionately impacting marginalized communities of color. Within this context, we're talking today about the role of local businesses in catalyzing new markets for construction, workers, and building materials that begin to address these major challenges in the fast-growing accessory dwelling unit space. And we all have a part to play in this. ADUs are just one form of housing that can help improve the housing landscape in California. And as you guys probably all know, between 2018 and 19, permits increased almost threefold, from 6,000 to 16,000, and completed units more than tripled from 2 to 7,000 units. So it's a very fast-growing segment to solve a very large problem that we have in California, which is housing people who live here and are moving here. And there are a lot of areas to navigate as a residential home builder: controlling costs, decreasing production times, providing new job opportunities, ensuring that homes support health and well-being while minimizing carbon emissions and energy use. Our guests today are working to service gaps within the traditional home building marketplace by leveraging new technologies, creating new materials, and shifting business models to address these intersecting challenges in innovative ways, while making the process of permitting, installing, and owning an ADU less than confusing along the way. Today, we have with us 3 guests. First, we have Sam Ruben, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer and co-founder of Mighty Builders, a construction technology company creating affordable and energy-efficient homes using 3D printing, robotics, and automation. Second, we have Kevin Casey, who's the CEO of New Venture Homes, which is a firm dedicated to creating homes that empower everyone to live in a more enriching life. The company is a market network.
New Avenue, yeah.
New Avenue.
Yeah.
What did I say?
New Venture.
Oh, I'm sorry. New Avenue, which is an old venture. It's been around for 10 years. He's like a veteran. Even though he looks quite young, he's got a lot of gray hair under there.
California living.
So the company's a market network with a team of designers and contractors and a system that uses transparency and data to create efficiencies in custom designed and custom built ADUs. And third, Justin Hirsch, who's the founder and CEO of Group Delphi, which oddly is an exhibit design firm that specializes in building immersive experiences for innovative brands like Microsoft and Apple. His company's been pivoting the last 6 months to supply ADU constructed with panelized systems to help address the housing crisis. And I want to thank you all for joining us today. And please provide your questions in the chat. And after the call, please send your questions and we'll try to put together a reply. So we're going to get started now on this panel discussion. And first, let's talk a little bit about workforce. So Mighty Builders is one of a number of companies working to automate small home building. With that comes a lot of opportunity to address the acute housing shortage in California and beyond. However, critics of automation will say, what about workforce? How do you think about balancing the much needed affordable housing at a speed and scale that's needed and revitalizing the construction workforce? Sam, I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah. So our goal at Mighty Buildings is really to help unlock the productivity of the existing labor force. And the ADUs are really our first foray into the market. Longer term, we're actually opening opening up what we're doing as a tool for the broader industry in the single family as well as multifamily in the future. And so how we're addressing the workforce issue is that here in California, the average age of the contractor is in the mid-50s. We're actually seeing an acute shortage of skilled labor, something that we're starting to see in other places around the country as well. And additionally, it's being impacted, as you noted in the intro, by the fact that because of the COVID crisis, we're seeing a lot of workers who are now furloughed or out of work because of the nature of construction and how many people can be on a site at any one time. So with our process, because we're doing prefabrication, leveraging 3D printing and robotic automation, we're taking the most dangerous elements of the job, the house, the framing, and other parts that are actually make it the second most dangerous job in America behind mining, and leveraging cutting edge technology to take care of that. And then really maximizing the value of the human labor to do the parts that really make sense for humans to do. And actually our goal at the end of the day is to create more work overall. And that's by reducing the amount of work per unit, but increasing the throughput and the productivity to the level where that overall work level is actually being increased. Additionally, one of the things we're doing is we're really hoping to attract a new generation of workers because we're starting to see those GCs and others retire and age out, and they're not being replaced. Workers are going into programming, going to other fields where they get to work with cutting edge technology. And we want to make construction one of those jobs. And our long-term vision is to have printing hubs, not just having our facility here in Oakland and then shipping everywhere across the country and across the world from here, but really to have printing hubs near areas where we have demand, where we have partner builders and developers. And so not just providing housing for those markets, but also providing new jobs for those markets, and as well as reducing those logistics.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Kevin, New Avenue Homes is essentially a shared technology platform for a design, build, project management cooperative. How are you leveraging technology to create more transparency for designers, builders, and customers? How does that functionality support a thriving local workforce?
Yeah, so our technology, how does our technology support a thriving local workforce? To focus on, to address that, what we've done is what we've focused on doing is really empowering both sides of like doing the work, design and building, as well as, the consumers who want to survive a project and kind of run the gauntlet of permitting, as you mentioned. So what on the designer side, which is architects, designers, and contractors, we empower them with, on the one hand, we have a tool that we use for really strong marketing, and then really strong support, almost like a back office throughout the entire project. I mean, at the end of the day, it's so hard to go out on your own and start a business as an architect or a designer or a contractor. We've got people with world-class resumes that are 15, 20 years of experience who are lucky to make $50,000 a year. And when they go out on their own, and they might close up their shop, if they don't get more business and back office. So we support that. We eliminate that risk. Like, we eliminate all the risk of getting enough clients, educating the clients. We really focus on educating clients so they know how to work with designers, the architects, builders, and they know what to expect throughout the design build process, especially with ADUs. I mean, that's pretty much what we do. It's process, education, empowerment, all bundled together to deliver a design build process. We've launched over 100 different architecture and construction companies that we've worked with over the past 10 years. Many of them we still work with. Some people become employees. Some people stay as independent contractors. But at the end of the day, we've really used ADUs to help get 100 businesses either off the ground or accelerated.
And ADUs are just one part of the platform. You're doing single family homes as well, correct?
Yes. Well, I started the company after doing door-to-door research. I like to point out I'm the only anthropology major that you might find in these kind of crowds. So we went door-to-door back in 2009 and interviewed homeowners. And we found that 30% of them wanted to add an ADU. And that 30% was split evenly in two halves. People who tried and failed, and then people who just assumed you can't do it. And that's 30%. I mean, if you look at the market, I mean, our business has grown 10x, which is great. But the reality is it's not even a drop in the bucket. There's about 30% of California homes, that's 3 million homes, that want the ADUs specifically. So what we do, though, is we focus on ADUs. We do custom design, custom construction, and almost always the project evolves. Sometimes it's extra work, it's seismic work, it's landscaping work. It might be lifting a house and building out the attic and the ground floor. So things expand. And sometimes it does become a custom home, ideally with an ADU. We're focused on advancing the single family housing model.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that the amount of education you're providing is providing a lot of transparency around cost and timeline for the consumers as well as the contractors, and which is often where there's a disconnect.
We try.
So maybe we spend a couple minutes talking about the marketplace. I think it's well known that innovation in the construction industry in the US is way behind other industries as well as other countries. And from building materials to how the systems are designed and assembled. Basically, big developers are part and parcel of this lag. And in the past 2 or 3 years, we've seen a huge jump in private investments in startups, industry outsiders, and big thinkers working to sort of nudge the industry from the outside in, which I think is certainly an interesting catalyst. And we've certainly seen it here in California. And Justin, I'd like to ask specifically you, because you're definitely an industry outsider coming from the exhibit industry, even though you design and build a lot of things. You build them inside and you put them together inside. So that's kind of unique. It's a rather different context. And you've been designing these immersive experiences for like 30 years, but you've decided, to sort of move, taking that sort of know-how of building multi-million-dollar exhibits and flat packed exhibits around the world, and then moving into ADUs. I'm curious kind of why. I mean, other than the fact that because of COVID, the exhibit business has disappeared, but I'm sure there's some other reasons behind your thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, John. I think, it's interesting. We actually started this journey almost 18 months ago. So we were kind of a year before COVID. And so it's interesting for us. COVID was an accelerant of feeling like we wanted to move faster, but, our core belief is really started first with a need. And, as Kevin stated so well, the potential in California for ADUs is massive, but the need is probably even more massive than a potential. Mm-hmm. And, we feel like there's a huge opportunity there to do something that, really goes back to your introduction of kind of starting to address some of those larger social injustices and environmental issues. So I think it's a really exciting opportunity. And as you said, we basically have been in the factory building business for 30 years. And what we really have kind of mastered in our exhibit world is how to take very complex architecture, convert it into sort of simple systems that can often be transported over very large distances and installed in a very brief period of time. So in the exhibit world, it's not unusual for us to set up a 10,000 square foot exhibit in 3 to 5 days, which is, it's a factor of, 30 or 40 shorter than the typical home building site construction process. So we're really trying to leverage that experience. The other thing that we've really kind of developed a strong working understanding of in the work we've done to date is we really get supply chain. And I know that doesn't sound super sexy, but we fervently believe that there's a tremendous amount of innovation that's already happened in the housing space. What kind of the weakness of the housing industry is not so much about innovation, but it's about integration. How do we bring the very best ideas that are already in the market, find ways to successfully integrate them in a factory environment where things can be done very efficiently, more cost effectively, and then put that on the field in an efficient way. And, we're also really cognizant. I love being on a panel with both Sam and Kevin because it's really clear that the housing need is so massive. There isn't actually going to be a single solution, and doing things like this is really crucial, where we all get better ideas and try to drive the collective industry forward more successfully. And then I think kind of to the point you were making, and you've asked everyone about is, we're both cognizant that we have to find ways to be more efficient with the input of labor, because that's going to be crucial to, controlling costs, but we can't make housing affordable on the backs of paying people less money. We need to be doing this as a way to create good quality middle-class jobs that people can afford to buy homes in the very neighborhoods that we're building in. And we think automation is a way, and factory work is a way to make things, I think Sam spoke to this, they can be safer, They can be more efficient. It's a better place, frankly, to train new entries in the workforce. So we think there's a lot of potential in that area.
That's great. Thank you. I think that's a good segue kind of into this next section in terms of materials, which is sort of in Sam's wheelhouse. So you can't really have a conversation about new building materials and building systems and not ask you, Sam, to tell us about Mighty Building's sort of proprietary printing technology and sort of full system design and sort of your end-to-end approach. Maybe you can give us a sneak preview sort of into some of the advances that you're making in materials and construction modalities and how that really will translate into energy savings and affordability and comfort for your clients.
Certainly, yeah. So at Mighty Buildings, we've developed a unique material and a unique printing system that utilizes light to harden the material, which means that we can harden it quickly enough that we can print unsupported spans, which opens up printing not only the floors and walls of a unit, but also the roof. And it also means we can open up new design possibilities. You can't see it on this unit behind me. Oh, there went the lights. You guys are getting sunlight instead. No, never mind. All right. The joys of Zoom in the modern era.
Maybe Justin can help you with your exhibit space.
So you can't see it on this side of the unit behind me, which is a one-bedroom that ADU we delivered to San Diego. But one of the unique features of our ADU modules is a 3D printed curved wall that really hints at the organic forms that we're able to do with 3D printing that can be quite expensive to do with traditional materials. But for us, there's no marginal cost to that. And along with the 3D printing and this ability to unlock new forms and shapes, as well as print just what we need, so create a zero waste production system. We've also implemented industrial robotic arms, proven out in the automotive industry and other sectors, which we're able to leverage for milling of the surface of our material to create unique finishes, to leave a raw finish, to apply spray coatings like stucco and others, to mimic brickwork, to mimic siding, to really make a truly design agnostic production system. And we're also able to leverage that to automate the pouring of foam insulation into the interior to really maximize the energy efficiency of that. And so we started with these modules, but we're introducing a new product that's coming to market next year, which is a panel system that we're leveraging for what we call our Mighty Houses as the initial product. And with the panelized system, it opens up the number of backyards we're able to get ADUs and deliver to, because obviously there's only so many properties that you can get a crane set up on that you can deliver a full module onto with power lines and everything. And so by leveraging panels that can be used with telehandlers and other smaller systems, we can access more backyards and open that up more. And one of the really cool things about what we're doing, because it's end-to-end digital fabrication, if there's a design change late in the process, that's not an added cost for us, because that's just a change in the model, which then gets converted automatically into the code, which runs the 3D printer and the robots. And so with that, we're really able to allow for design changes. We're really able to allow for a flexibility of design. And we've also developed a Revit plugin that makes it easy for designers and builders to work with a panel system, and in the future to create truly custom designs that do real-time costing and build all that in quite easily. And additionally, we're leveraging prefabrication in that we have prefabricated kitchen bathroom models that are a part of our system to really further optimize that labor. So what we're delivering to the customer is a finished home that's going to go up really, really quickly, either in a couple days with the modules or a matter of a week or so with the panel system. And that really opens things up. And when it comes to cost, compared to comparable units here in California, we're about 45% less than site-built and about 20 to 30% less than traditional prefab, because we're leveraging this zero waste production. And then when it comes to energy efficiency, because of the fact that we're having 3D printed modules that are airtight, and with these panel systems, they're coming together very tightly as well, we're able to maximize the efficiency to bring down the cost, not just up front, but also over the lifetime of the structure, and as well as achieving California's zero net energy standards and making it easy to move into passive house and other standards as well.
It's exciting. It sounds like a new frontier for housing. I mean, to be able to build something that's 45% less expensive than what we have in the market today, that would be a huge leap forward, without a doubt. I'd like to sort of move on a little bit and talk about sort of new materials and green building and affordability and sort of healthy homes for the next few minutes. And, we think of ADUs as kind of an entry point into rethinking the building culture at Build It Green at sort of multiple scales, namely that they can be a solution to housing and a strategy for achieving California's 2030 greenhouse gas emissions goals. They need to be affordable, sustainable, and certainly healthy for people to live in. And Kevin, I'd like to ask sort of how does the traditional stick-built process that you're using that can be customized for various typographic and geographic applications, and how does it sort of retain neighborhood character, and how does it really stack up against the sort of the allegedly more efficient panelized or printed homes, modular homes?
Well, so
maybe I'll ask all of you to discuss this, but maybe
yes,
Kevin.
yeah. So the ADU market, and part of our focus, I mean, if you're thinking about sustainability and ADUs, the biggest intersection is that you're going to existing communities, you're working in existing houses, or near existing backyards, existing houses. As far as how we view the challenge with custom design and custom building, which you might call it stick built, but it could be other. We've used ICF forms, we've used panels, like you can do, I mean, Sam just talked about panels and Justin's doing panels.
Yep.
If you can custom design it, it's going to be more or less custom built, and then you can have prefab components, or you can have full-on modular units, and there's a lot of flexibility. But the key is, if you want to think about sustainability, it's how can you get a house into another house, into a single family home, one way or the other. So for example, we have projects in Oakland, and we just had a call today of a little Victorian house in Berkeley. It's 1,000 square feet. They want to lift it up, add at least 1,000 square feet on the ground floor, and then also build out the attic and turn it from 1,000 square feet into 2,500 square feet. The range for stick-built costs, when you get into projects like that, you can get down below $200 a square foot. You can, for construction costs, you can get down to, like, we did a project in Alameda, $133 a square foot once we got out of the ground and above the foundation. So that's the stick-built component. There's a whole thing that we could go deep on, which is the cost to get through permitting and regulations and all that.
Site work, foundation work.
Yeah, and that's California. I mean, if you go to South Carolina, we're lucky we have a national team distributed. One of our team members in South Carolina, it's $88 a square foot to build a house over there. We have a project in upstate New York outside of Buffalo. It's $166 a square foot, for a nice custom home there. But stick built, the key with stick built is you can customize it. We have a project in San Francisco. It's barely $200 a square foot because it's repurposing a ground floor of a 10-foot basement. So it's a remodel. It's using existing space. So it's hard to beat that on a sustainability side when you're using existing assets that are already there. Also so sustainability and price-wise,
So is square foot even a good measure?
I don't like square foot much, but people think that way. It's how many bedrooms. My measure is how many bedrooms can you get for how many thousands of dollars. And what's the monthly cost? I would steer every conversation towards what's your monthly financing cost, and for the people that are using it. If you can get a family of 4 into a $300,000 ADU, I mean, you just created the most affordable home in anywhere in the Bay Area or California. So that's sustainability and cost side. Was there another part to the?
There was the healthy component, the sort of healthy side of this.
Healthy, I mean. So of course there's all the building stuff, and I know the audience is, no VOC paints and healthy materials and indoor air quality and everything that goes with that. There's also, I think, a bigger issue, which is where do you live? Are you 5 minutes from the person who called us today from Berkeley? He lives in a little Victorian, and he's like, it's a block to my daughter's preschool. It's 5 minutes to my work. It's 5 minutes to my wife's work. He's riding a bike, to get to work every day. You can't beat that. If you got a healthy community and a healthy lifestyle versus driving an hour, I mean, that's the game changer for health.
And an ADU has a huge benefit in being able to infill and put people close to where they work and where they want to be. And leverage
was a huge perk 9 months ago, but now hopefully one of the silver linings to COVID is that people push back on going back to commuting lifestyle and
absolutely. Justin, I'd love you to maybe jump in here and talk for a bit about your thoughts relative to the question.
Yeah, well, I was saying, I think one of the things we have to be really cognizant of, the crisis is right now, and we're trying to figure out how to make sure that we're doing projects that can be built today. And as I said, I think there is so much good innovation in the industry. It's the integration that's really crucial. I also think that the danger is always falling in love with a particular part of the system, but in the end, homes are, to the person who lives there, it's not a window, it's not a piece of insulation, it's the success of the overall home system. So I think one of the things we're really trying to be thoughtful in the factory a build model is how you control every aspect of the construction so that you're really maximizing the efficiency of all of the systems you're putting in. And the other thing is then how you really use the kind of the factory build process and the scale mindset to drive down costs so that the incremental difference in using a triple pane glazing system is so minor compared to double pane glazing that frankly, why wouldn't you? And at that point, you're kind of taking some of those decisions where people have to kind of struggle with the, that kind of, this window's $1,000 more, and just see it as I'm getting a project that's successful for me at a price point I can afford, and I'm getting a better product. I think that's really essential to how we kind of take these things out of the experimental side and really put them into the category of just everyday expectations.
I think the point that you make about managing the end-to-end supply chain is where a lot of manufactured housing solutions have gone amiss, where basically the responsibility ends at the loading dock, and it's multiple other players who have to try to put the pieces together, and it becomes a rather fragmented supply chain. So what you thought you were going to save at the outset, you sort of lose in the inefficiency because of the fragmentation of the supply chain on the back end.
Yeah, and I think also to your point about, kind of, and Kevin touched on this, is that, foundation systems in the Bay Area are so expensive and so complex. So we're spending a lot of time in our innovation really thinking about how to control the entirety of the stack, including the foundation system, and frankly, looking at materials that move away from high carbon contents of concrete, and where can we find ways to lighten the environmental footprint while improving the control over the delivery of the entire project.
That's great. Sam, you want to take that away?
Similarly, that's a great segue, because one of the cool things about what we're doing is that for our ADU customers, we're actually offering a full turnkey solution. So we coordinate everything from their initial upfront experience through the permitting process. We coordinate the general contractor on site for the foundation. We coordinate the delivery, we coordinate the install, and we take care of them once it is installed as well. And so for us, it's also about, as Justin mentioned, what's it look like to have a lower impact when it comes to the foundation, when it comes to the site work. And so that's one of the great things about being able to do prefab, is that you can really minimize how much time and how much effort and how much destruction is required on the site. And you can take advantage of things like helical piers, where you just got basically big metal screws that go straight into the ground that allow you to eliminate the majority of the concrete. And so what we've designed ours for is really whatever best fits a specific site. So we actually can have like 7 or 8 different types of foundations, depending on what the slope's like, what the soil's like, what kind of grading is required, all of that. And combining that with that turnkey experience, and then just the efficiency of what we're doing. The fact that we're eliminating 3 to 5 pounds per square foot that goes to a landfill and a traditional build to really improve that sustainability. And right now, even though we just have our current units with our designs, the technology opens up the ability to put in units of any design that still fully leverage what we're doing, and are also able to achieve the economies of scale at this level of a single floor plan. So we can do fully customized units, capture those economies of scale and that affordability, because we just print exactly what's needed. We don't need to shift around our supply chain. We don't need to shift around our production floor. We literally just change the code in the software, and it goes from one design to another, from one print to another. And so that's one of the things that gets me really excited about bringing 21st century technology to bear. Because I agree with Justin, it is a lot really about integration and how do we take advantage of a lot of the great ideas that are out there, but it's also about identifying what are the next tools that we can use, because a lot of times we're still building using the same technology we did 50, 100 years ago. We just might have found better ways to do it. And yet we have whole new opportunities with some of the innovations that are out there, like with what we're doing, what companies like Carbon Cure are doing as far as sequestering CO2 to create a better concrete. And there's space in between. So I think there's a really exciting time to be in building and to be in green construction, because it is all hands on deck. It's a huge problem, and there's no, as has been said, there's no one solution that's going to solve it. But I think it's really important that we learn from each other, that we figure out how can we complement each other, and really take advantage of what each other are doing to maximize the impact. Because I mean, As Newsom loves quoting the McKinsey study, it says we need 3.5 million new homes in California alone by
That's right.
2025, and we're going to build less than a million. So it's a big problem. That's just California. So.
Yeah, and I think the three of you on the call, I mean, I think you actually are doing complementary things. It's and could actually, I think there's actually synergy in terms of you're each kind of approaching it differently, and I think there's some complementarity to what, at least what I've observed and learned in looking at your websites and having these short conversations. But I'd like to sort of ask you each kind of an unprepared question, if I may. I'll start with Kevin. I'll start with you. I mean, Avenue Homes has focused on using technology to increase transparency and efficiency of the end-to-end kind of traditional custom building process, which I think is awesome because it's controlling that process, which is really critical. I mean, you can build with the best materials or the worst materials, but if you have a great process, you can generally find your way to the end pretty efficiently. And I'm curious kind of what metrics that you can speak to with respect to increasing sort of the reliability of hitting the budgeted cost of a project and the time for construction, you know, such as days under construction. And can you really pencil out savings for your customers compared to them, you know, just picking up and making the phone call to the architect who then finds a general contractor and you've, you know, got 15 or 20 subs on your job site. I mean, it seems like to me, with what you've described, you're bringing potentially a lot more reliability of how long it takes to build it and how much it's going to cost, which is certainly an issue that a lot of homeowners have. And the fear they have when they start a project is they don't know how long it's going to take. And they've heard terrible stories and they don't know how much it's going to cost until it's finished.
Totally. Perfect surprise question, by the way, because it's a great one, fun one to answer. So, I mean, yeah, you're pointing at risk and fear, and we just had a long discussion internally about this. Like, what are people terrified of, right? Like, why are people not building projects? And you know, the old rule that contractors are going to throw numbers at you, and you like double the time and double the cost, and you know, hope you're getting close to that, is just what people believe. Right. And we get phone calls all the time with people alluding to that or saying that explicitly. So the key with one strategic shift that the industry has been trying to do for a long time is move to design build, right? Where the builder is involved at the very beginning and the designer is involved all the way through the end. And you don't basically put your checkbook and your full faith and trust in just one person, either a designer or a builder, and hope that their word is good. Software can actually make design build work. So we're unique in that we have in-house employees on the design side. We also have independent contractors who are designers with their own firms. They work from home. John, I didn't mention on the pre-call, like Amy used to work with you at your back company. That's right. She's been one of our best designers for 5 years. She's world class. She works from home. So the key is software allows us to have people like that, and basically a flexible team, independent designer, employee, doesn't matter, paired up with a builder. And typically we have design build teams that are people we've worked with long term, but it could be an open system where the owner brings in their own builder. But the key is the software allows us to connect those people and control the process, really control how the quotes are done, what the contracts say, how changes are issued, and we track all that data. I mean, if we have a you know, very passionate commitment to transparency and saying we have I joke, some of the worst marketing out there, like San Francisco projects that took 3 years, right? And we're going to tell you why it took 3 years. Because that person fought with their neighbors for 50 years and had some payback coming their way, you know, and neighbors complained. Like, that could happen. And the key is tell us if you're that person at the start and we can plan for it, right? But so what we do is we track the quotes and we track the costs. Our average projects are 8% more than the original budget. Design build, again, when you update the estimates all the way through the design process, you don't get a huge surprise. You don't get a bid twice your budget. The 8% increase we have is typically half non-discretionary change orders. The inspector shows up and tells you to take the plastic out and put cast iron in or something that is debatable. Or another 4% goes to, we're tracking on budget, and what do you know, we want nicer cabinets, nicer counters, you know, nicer flooring, and just stuff. So that's where the software helps on the cost side. I will say in the spirit of transparency, we don't finish projects in a shorter time frame. we've had big partners reached out to us and say, hey, can you get these things done in 3 weeks? And I was like, we're not going to reduce a 6 to 8 month build to 3 weeks. What we can do is eliminate the need to be there at 7 a.m., check in at your lunch break, and then be there at 4:30 p.m. with your checkbook to write a check. We can reduce that to a weekly check-in, or you can do it digitally or virtually, from home. But not so much an issue these days. I mean, these days the issue is probably you're going to want to spend more time out there talking to the crew than you should, because you'll be home. But the reality is, if we can save you time, it's truly like if it can go from an hour or two a day for 6 or 8 months to an hour or two a week as a homeowner for 6 or 8 months, that is a pretty significant change on your quality of life throughout the remodel. That eliminates the whole nightmare aspect. That's one of the old assumptions.
Right.
So those are the two big ones.
No, that's good. That's good. I appreciate that. Justin, be curious. I got a good question for you, and then I'll come to you, Sam, if that's all right. So, I mean, Group Delphi's sort of porting a lot of your modular design, manufacturing know-how from, as you mentioned, 30 years of experience in exhibition building and bringing that over to the housing industry. And however, assembling an ADU in a backyard presents a lot of challenges, different challenges than setting up a trade show booth in a closed, conditioned environment. And I'd be interested in what innovations Delphi is developing to streamline the site work. You talked briefly about the foundation, but that would be one area. And then the other sort of nightmare for a lot of projects or high costs or unknown is the utility hookups for your houses. And what impact will this have on kind of the required trade skill sets for a new construction workforce?
Yeah, that's a great question. And John, I think the first thing that's important to acknowledge is obviously we have a tremendous amount of expertise in areas that are relevant to this discussion. But one of the things I've learned in 30 years of business is that you want to build on the shoulders of giants, and there are obviously a lot of other smart people with expertise in the housing space, and we're trying to be very humble about what we know and ask a lot of questions of a lot of smart people and figure out where are the tricks and trades that people have already developed but maybe haven't figured out how to scale appropriately and how to use that. As I was referring to earlier, we think and you alluded to this, is that one of the challenges of the modular world is that an awful lot of the modular companies have kind of tended to stop at the building line and not deal with the foundation issue. But of course, that's a big, important part. And it's really hard to get true integration if you don't deal with that. So we're investing a lot of time and energy. We've got a great partner in that to really help us think about how we develop the foundation system and how we make sure that it is adaptable to a number of different sites, recognizing that, in the Bay Area, we have a pretty diverse, environment to build in. And obviously, as we expand beyond the Bay Area, that becomes even more significant. And then, you also mentioned utilities. And I think, there's just been a kind of tendency in the construction trades to kind of lack in the spirit of coordination and pre-planning and pre-building. So, we're really looking at those utilities and going, okay, how can we try to have the fewest number of trenches and still meet code requirement? How can we look for what can be pre-built into, like electrical whip systems where you're bringing things that get dropped in very quickly. They're already the right length. They're already meeting code. And the other thing is really, how do you just make sure that you do the same thing over and over again? Because if you really want to have good trade development, and you don't want somebody looking at, a Cutler hammer breaker box one day and, an Eaton and box the next day, right? I mean, there's just, everybody has their personal preference. They may both be good, but finally you have to pick systems, standardize around those things, and really figure out how to make that so it's a predictable process.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, I think there are a lot of things that can be standardized that are sort of customers are indifferent around. I mean, or they're invisible. I mean, like you said, a breaker box, I don't think a customer has ever been asked what kind of breaker box they would like to have, or what kind of plumbing fittings, or what kind of hot water heater. I mean, there are a lot of things that are sort of under the hood that we tend to specify differently each time, and it requires the trade person to have to get out the handbook or open up their app to figure out how to put it together.
I think it's kind of,
those can be standardized. I would agree with you.
yeah, I mean, obviously all of us have to obsess about the details and understand the systems, but the homeowner, they don't care about how the roof is built. They care that the roof keeps the weather out. And I think we always have to keep coming back to the idea is that these are homes, and people think about what the home experience is. It's safe, it's comfortable, it's environmentally sound, but they don't like the how, as you said, it's less important to them than getting the right results and the right, frankly, living experience.
No, that's good. Thank you. Sam, I've spent a little bit of time on your website, and I'm curious that once the shell is printed, you've spent a lot of time talking about the printing process, which is great. Can you talk about how your process differs from sort of classic modular home production for preparing and installing like the windows, the doors, the HVAC, the electrical, the plumbing, and the finishes? You touched briefly on the exterior finish and some of the robotic finishing that you're doing, but I'm curious how the rest of that stuff is going together. And you do mention, I think in some of your literature, that your buildings do fall under the factory built housing code for California, which certainly has some kind of restrictions to some extent in terms of the breadth and depth of customization that you can do.
Yeah, so one of the really exciting things that we've done is we've borrowed heavily from the shipbuilding industry, which, as you may know, I mean, we've got shipyards in Korea that can build 1,000-foot ship in a week. And a lot of that is by leveraging prefabrication on a grand scale. And so for our bathroom pods, which actually serve as a wet wall for our kitchen, also, we leverage a third-party vendor that specializes in making prefabricated bathroom units. So that's we're able to minimize our footprint by bringing that in and having that really plug and play. And that kind of helps optimize it, takes advantage of a vendor that's already spent a lot of time perfecting their system and really making it really efficient. Allows us to make sure we're getting a really high quality that's going to be the same every time, because again, they've really perfected that. And having that able to be plug and played right into our unit as we're assembling it here on our factory floor. And then when it comes to the HVAC and everything, a lot of that we just use mini splits, so it's pretty straightforward. And again, it's set up so that hooks up really quickly on site. We have, because you got the portion of it that does fit outside, along with by the portion where the water heater is, and that all can connect up in a matter of a couple hours. So that all moves really, really smoothly. And in a lot of ways, we're not, in that regard, we're not that different from traditional modular. What we're doing is really figuring out how do we leverage new technology to take prefab to the point where it really lives up to its promise. Because there's a lot of great things that prefabrication offers, as Justin's alluded to, with the ability to control your quality because you're doing it in a facility, to be able to do a higher level of safety, a higher level of work environment, better work environment for your workers. And what we're doing is taking that, combining it with 3D printing and robotic finishing to really unlock that. And one of the cool things I'm excited about is with our new panels that we're moving forward with, the ability to really leverage BIM and really to be able to do custom panels that have pre-printed chaseways. So that's already all in there, and it really becomes truly plug and play with tethered electrical, tethered plumbing that can then just plug together when it's all ready to go on site with those panels. And so that helps unlock a lot of that. Yeah.
How do you see the panel playing together with the three-dimensional module volumetric units? I mean, are they two separate platforms, or do they nest?
So for right now, we're offering that they are two different. We have two different sets of models. We have our modular, our Mighty Mods, which are our studio and one and two bedrooms that are full modules, and then we have the Mighty Panel system that is a separate system that comes that's a panel kit. But in the future, there's no reason that they can't work together, because what our real goal, as I alluded to earlier, is that we want to be a tool for industry. So for what we're doing right now, we're going direct to consumer with our ADUs. But we've already signed our first contract with a developer who we're creating a line of custom over garage ADUs for. They're a multifamily developer in Southern California that uses our panel system to create a series of custom floor plans for that. And there's no reason that we can't do systems like Kevin was alluding to that bring together panels, that bring together modules, and that might also work together with stick build. For our first 8 units, the modules are actually a combination of a steel frame and a 3D printed curved wall. So we have that ability already to work with hand in hand with traditional materials and with traditional structures. And so that's something that I get really excited about when I start thinking about what we're doing, is that versatility, is the fact that we're not limited to just doing it one way or another way. We have that ability to open it up. And we are certified under the Factory Built Housing Program, but in truth, even if you're dealing with a custom floor plan, one of the things that we're able to do is certify the panels or the modules as building components that can then be brought together. So you still might do some work on the local level, or you just go ahead and certify that whole floor plan as a single floor plan at the state level, because the design approval agency already knows what we're doing, is comfortable with what we're doing. It takes them a matter of hours instead of a matter of weeks or months. And so even with a single floor plan under the Factory Built Housing Program, if you have it set up with the right partner who you're working with that's certified by the state, it can really streamline the process as well, even if it's only an individual unit. So.
Right. So we have a few minutes left, and I'd like to maybe move to some closing thoughts on sort of opportunity. And if each of you could perhaps in a minute each share 2 or 3 sort of bullet points that really talk about some of the, help people to think about some of the broader mid-range opportunity areas for this community. And what we might explore, or what we might encourage people in our industry to explore in terms of new markets or partnerships or education, and what should people in our industry be preparing for as we look forward, say, the next 2 or 3 years. Sam, or who would like to start?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, obviously I'm a little biased, but I think looking at how we leverage new technology and what it means to bring in a new generation of workers. So I think it's been really exciting with what we're doing, helping to attract in new workers. Also looking at what like the Carpenters Union has done with Factory OS, as far as how do you bring in the labor community to be a part of prefab and a part of everything that's going on in a way that's really impactful, but still allows for the efficiencies necessary to bring the cost of construction down, so we can actually provide that affordability to the homeowner.
Kevin?
So a couple of bullet points on what people should think about. I would say, assuming that 90% of the people on the call are, industry professionals, I would say we as an industry, I would love to see us start talking about how to make existing single family homes as big as possible with as many in-law units as possible, which don't confuse it with the McMansion 3, 4, 5, 6,000 square foot house. Think of the 1,200 square foot house that I know half the people on this call are sitting in right now. And like, what would that be like if it was 2,000 or 3,000 square feet with 2 in-law units? And then think about, it's going to be scary expensive no matter how you do it, prefab, custom, anything. It's going to be a lot of money. But think about financing and what's the monthly cost, especially if you rent. Doesn't matter if you rent to your business because you're working from home, or you rent to your, college kids or whomever, or family, family sells a house and moves in with you. So I would say, think about monthly costs. I just encourage people to do that. And then I think to points made earlier by Justin, like if you're thinking long-term, maybe those dual and triple pane casement windows aren't that big of a hit when you look at it as a part of a mortgage. Last thing, I can't resist. We are looking for people. Go to newavenuehomes.com, and we're looking for designers and builders and contractors, and we're growing. So reach out. We want anyone with 5 years experience or more. Like we have a need.
That's a great question. And it's one of the questions that came from one of the panelists, or not panelists, but one of the people listening was asking sort of what criteria or job experience do you look for? So since you're already sort of initiating that, maybe you could take a few more seconds and talk about what you're looking for and the kinds of people you're expanding.
On our side, it's designers, people that are on their way to becoming architects, or people that want to focus on residential design. You don't need to be licensed architect to do all the structures that we've talked about today. Don't require architectural licenses. So really good, an interest in residential design and experience. I wouldn't even say you need 5 years experience. We've had ADUs built by designers that are first year out of design school that are really good. With senior mentorship and stuff like that, of course, but and then on the building side, it's generally speaking for us, we want people that have a license, either they're very close to getting their contractor's license or they've got it. Team players, of course, like we're going to work as a team here. This isn't like there's no superstar in our world. I mean, the number one thing, we were just talking about this today, like if you get it, right? If you know how stuff works, if you grew up with a parent or an uncle or whatever, or a mom or who's flipping houses and remodeling projects on the weekend, if you know how stuff works and you can deal with city politics, like you'll do well. Like that's what, so that's a short list.
Yeah. Thanks. Justin, you have a few closing comments?
Yeah, I think a few things. The first is we've all kind of talked about is that I think we all have to put aside kind of our traditional prejudice and be really open-minded about where the opportunity for collaboration is, because, again, housing is a massive market, which is exciting, but it's also a little daunting, and we need lots of good solutions. I think that we also have the context that all of us who are on the delivery side are going to be held in check by the regulatory environment. And while California has taken some really important steps, and that's super exciting to see, there's still municipalities that are either dragging their feet about some of the regulation or frankly finding ways, maybe unintentionally, just to make it more confusing than it needs to be. So I think we have to continue to look at the regulatory environment, and certainly like the work that Kevin's doing to just kind of try to make transparency, have it easier for people to understand what they're getting into, I think is really important. And I think the kind of last area is that we're all going to have to be thinking creatively, and obviously there are people in the space, about the kind of financial models. I think, that whole point about you've got to figure out how to make this affordable on a monthly basis for people. And I think there's a tremendous number of people who have the land asset, but maybe not necessarily the financial wherewithal, the financial assets necessary. And I think that is going to require the industry as a whole to be thoughtful about how we kind of open up that market, make it more possible for more people to build these kinds of projects. And those would be the three areas I think are really important.
Well, that's good. Thank you. So we have, 5 or 6 minutes left, and I'd like to sort of open it up to Q&A. And I've been seeing some stuff in the chat. And one of the questions that's kind of interesting and rather germane, I think, or a couple of them actually. One, how are you guys thinking about sort of the future of fire resiliency for ADU buildings? I mean, it's certainly a big issue. Not only do we have a lot of buildings to replace, but how do we make them more resilient than perhaps they have been in the past? And have you been giving any thought to that?
Yeah, we're sort of, we're starting with the presumption that the goal is to make a fire resistant building. And rather than seeing that as additive, we're seeing, like that, let's start with that basic premise. And we're really trying to look at all of the systems to make it as resilient as possible. I think we're all just cognizant that, the concept of what's a wildland fire in California has fundamentally shifted, and, Santa Rosa turned into a wildland fire, and obviously no one thought of that 10 years ago. So I think it's critical we're all kind of starting with that premise.
And for us, as we develop our material and as we continue to develop new materials, because we're always looking to improve and get better, fire resistance has been a key factor of what we're doing. We've got a Class A flame spread rating already. We're working on achieving a 2 to 4 hour fire rating on our material to really be able to make sure that maximizes its viability given the new realities of fire. And also our material is naturally hydrophobic. So if something does happen, it does have to get hit. There's a lot of water there. That minimizes the damage from the action. Because obviously when you have a fire, even if you save the home from the fire, you then have to deal with the reality that there's likely water damage and other issues. So we're really looking at both elements of that as we develop our material and our units.
Other question that's come up from one of the Build a Green Advisory Board members is sort of the question of embodied energy and embodied carbon in each of your systems. And how do you think about the sort of the carbon impact or the embodied energy impact in terms of your materials choices or in terms of your systems choices?
Anyone?
Anybody want to respond to that?
Anyone?
I,
It's a complicated
I mean,
one.
I think we all have to be, at least from my perspective, we want to make sure we're careful about not over promising and under delivering, because obviously there's a lot of trade-offs in construction. But what we're trying to be is really thoughtful about the materials used and what they're both short-term, the carbon content from the manufacturing process, but what their long-term impact is on the kind of overall envelope system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, similarly, one of the things that we're really looking at is what's the material usage. So we're leveraging what we're doing in the 3D printing and fiber reinforcement to be able to really reduce the material usage overall. As well as increasing the energy efficiency of the structure to be able to build to things like passive house standards, really that go above and beyond zero net energy. And we're also looking to the future and looking at some of these new nascent technologies around, such as like biomass-based production of polymers, because we are using a thermoset composite. And we're also looking at what's it mean to use recycled material in. And so with our zero waste production, when we mill our surfaces, we actually capture that and return that back in to new material. We're also working with some partnerships on using some pre-consumer waste as well as additives in there to further reduce that impact. So we're always actively striving to reduce our impact overall, both in the manufacturing process as well as over the lifetime and end of use, because we are looking at what's it mean to recycle our units at the end of life, because just zero waste means all the way through the full life cycle, not just up front.
Are any of you doing passive house projects or building to passive house standards at this point, or is that something down the road? Or
We've had a couple that are passive inspired to respect the battle over the term. Yeah. It's hard. We haven't gone all the way to full passive certification. Passive inspired is something that a lot of people are into, that a lot of people want. We've done net zero as well. We have done, officially crossed that hurdle. With ADUs in the Bay Area, in Oakland and Berkeley, it's not that hard to get to a net zero standard. And I think we're all heading that direction anyways, obviously due to codes, but yeah. Did Mighty do passive?
We haven't built one yet, but our Mighty houses were originally designed to be passive. We've kind of pulled it back to the net zero for now, but do have the ability to pretty easily get there, because it's just basically a matter of making the walls a little bit thicker.
Some trivia along those lines. We sat down with one of the Berkeley Lab scientists, energy efficiency scientists, years ago, when we were starting the company, and he's looked at the plans of one of our small ADUs, and he said, "This thing needs a hairdryer to heat it."
Yeah.
And your laptop and your refrigerator are going to get the job done.
Right.
And that's, I think, a great point. It's really understanding the house as a system, and really understanding what are all the different pieces that go into it to really make sure you're optimizing your heating and cooling and your energy usage in order to achieve things like passive house and really maximize that. Yeah, I think that's a great point, Kevin.
So we're kind of nearing the end of our hour. We've got some great questions, and there's still more questions in the chat. There are also a number of people asking to get in touch with you guys because they might be interested in working with you, or they're contractors or they're designers. So I would, if you're okay, Chloe from Gilbert Green will share your contact information with them so people can reach out to you. I'd like to thank the audience for their great questions. And just as a reminder, this is part of a fall program. A series of forums that we're running that explore the intersection within the building ecosystem through the lens of ADUs and regenerative development in collaboration with thought leaders, building industry professionals, and members of the broader Build a Green community. We're really envisioning a new approach to home and neighborhood building that fosters health in the broadest sense and as an interconnected web of personal, community, and bioregional well-being. And we really hope you'll join us for the next discussion, which is coming up on October 7th. And we're going to talk about innovative financial mechanisms for funding ADU projects and enhancing the wealth of your community, not just for the homeowner. So you can register at buildagreen.com or .org, buildagreen.org, or Build a Green's Everbright page today or in the next few days. I'm really grateful for you guys for spending the evening with us and sharing your thoughts and insights, and really look forward to, I hope this is the beginning of a conversation, and it seems like there could be some interesting intersections between the work that you're all doing. And I hope that having the opportunity to have met and spend time on this panel together, you'll reach out to each other and help us build more houses to solve our huge problem here in California and help us grow the economy. So again, in closing, really appreciate your time. Thank you to the audience for joining and listening to these great conversations, and look forward to seeing you on October 7th. Thanks very much.
Thanks, John. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Sam. Justin. See you all soon. Hope to see you soon. Thanks.
Yes, likewise.